Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com.
Love pets, but can't stand the idea of them suffering? The Animal Alliance feels your pain. Our spay and neuter programs aim to reduce overpopulation and spare our bleeding hearts. Visit theanimalalliance.org to help us in our compassionate mission.
Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show. And today we have a very, very different guest than typical as far as industry-wise. RJ Burr, he's a third generation oil producer, so in the oil business, and it's going to become fourth. His sons are getting in the business, and just I have so many questions about a lot about this, but I want to first find out from RJ, how did you grow up? Like, what was that like growing up? What were the values, the principles, the things that guided you into who you are and where you are today?
Yeah, I was just a kid born in Texas. I had 3 older sisters. And so my dad and mom didn't quite know what to do when I got there. And, I guess the easiest way to say it is I was not an easy kid. I was into everything. And, having 3 sisters above that kind of rocked my parents a little bit. And so, when it boils down to, we're just a big family. That's from my mom, my dad, my grandparents, my uncles. We were all together. Now, when it comes to oil, a lot of people spend decades searching for their purpose. I was one of the fortunate ones. I knew mine at 7, and that was the first time my dad took me to the field. I get out there. I'd been out to the field when I was younger, but I didn't really. This was the one, go to a school with Dad Day. And so I'm riding in the car. We go to Luling, Texas. And if you know anything about Luling, Texas, it was the middle of summer. It's like 800 degrees outside. You feel like when you walk outside, your face is going to melt off. It was hot. But as soon as we get there, I open the door and I said, Dad, what's that smell? He said, baby, that's money. Luling smells like oil. And unless you know that smell, it's not a pleasant smell to those that don't really know it. I'm not going to beat around the bush on that. It's just, it doesn't smell good sometimes. However, when we went out to the field and I saw that army of pump jacks, the horses going up and down, I was hooked. That I knew what I wanted to do. Now, what I didn't know is that it's what my grandpa did. It's what my uncles did. I didn't know that it was a family business. And, got involved in the business. Graduated high school, made my first sale 3 months later, and I haven't looked back. This is all I've ever done.
When you say you made your first sale, what exactly were you selling? Like, what side of the business are you in from a sales perspective?
Well, it was a limited partnership. I started working at a brokerage firm. Got my 63, my 22. Ended up with getting my 7, my principal's license. Ended up doing the whole broker registration, and that's really to fund your programs legally when you're selling a security. That was the route we had to go, and that's really not the route I say anymore now that I'm president of the company. Funding the deals really isn't my main priority. We have a lot of partners who've been with us years now. Don't get me wrong. We look for anybody who wants to save some money in taxes and generate some good income. Look at what we're doing. Panex.us/learn is our website. We put it together for individuals that have never invested in oil. The one thing I have noticed is, I don't want to get long-winded, but to tell the story properly, I have to kind of fill it out.
Sure, that's fine.
When I got involved in the business, my dad at that point ran everything. He wore every hat in the business. And as successful as he was, we soon came to realize that for one person to do all those jobs, it's darn near impossible. There's just too many moving parts. And so very early, my brother and I, we kind of split it up into 2 sides. The first side of the business was the organization and fundraising side. And the simple fact of the matter is, if you can't fund your own deals, you're always at the mercy of somebody who can. And the other side of the business is the geological and the drilling side, the field operation side. And the premise on that is the same thing. If you can't economically find oil and produce it, you're always going to be at the mercy of somebody who can. And so, like I said a minute ago, I got involved in the business. My dad, my first day at the office, my dad sat me down, put a phone book in front of me, handed me a script and a phone, said, have fun. And I entered the fundraising side. My brother, on the other hand, I don't think he made it to the office for the first 10 years. He went straight to the field side. And that's how we spent our first 20 years in the business. We call it our first life in oil. And that life ended when Marathon Oil bought our family company here about 12 years ago. Entered into early retirement. At that point in time, I was going to play on the PGA Tour in my mid-30s. It took me about a month and a half to realize that wasn't going to happen. And took another couple years for us to finally go stir crazy. And it'll be, in fact, this month, it's 8 years ago this month that we started PanX. And really, in the biggest change between the first and second life in oil is really my perspective. The first life in oil, heck, I cut my teeth at the end of the J.R. Ewing era of oil. It was the most ruthless cutthroat time that oil had ever seen. And so coming into my second life in oil, I don't have to do this. There's nothing, there's nothing that says, Jay, you can't just walk away and you and your family will be good for the rest of your life. We're fine. However, the biggest difference now is my partners are truly my partners, my investing partners. They're not my investors. We're partners in everything we do. And for us to do that, they need to understand the industry, not to the level that I do. They don't need to be experts in it, but they need to understand the industry. And that's been my biggest surprise is when you look at the fact that oil is the most precious resource known to man. I mean, when you look at everything that oil does in your day-to-day life, most people have no clue how much and how intricately involved oil is in your life. And so when you finally realize that and realize that, look, you need to educate people on the oil industry. Prime example, if you went out and asked the average American, hey, name me an American oil company, most of them would go with Exxon. Most of them would go with some of the majors. When the fact of the matter, 83% of the oil produced, 90% of the natural gas produced, and more than 90% of the wells drilled domestically are drilled by roughly 9,000 independent companies that average 12 employees or less. That's your American oil industry. And so when you look at American oil, it's really not. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some very large independent companies out there. There's some big power players out there. However, the vast majority of the companies are mom and pop companies. And so where we've been fortunate is the fact that with us being able to sit back and take our time, we're not forced by funds to do anything we don't want to do. And so we can sit back and really we call it the converging factors, but we saw several things happening that spoke to a pretty good opportunity if you timed it right. And basically what we saw, one, it's oil. Look, there is no getting away from oil. We are, as a species, we are addicted to oil. And there's really, I hate to say it, but that's part of our day-to-day lives. Well, the second was the push to green energy. Oil, like we were talking earlier, I was saying, oil has provided more upward mobility for humanity than any other product, yet it's been demonized for 70 years. And so you look at that, you're like, So they're trying to push people away from oil. Well, is that going to work? Well, when you do the research, no. There's nothing out there economically or feasibly that can replace oil right now. It just hadn't happened. Whether it be solar panels, for a solar farm to produce the amount of energy we use annually, it would take a solar farm with the most modern solar panels, the size of New Jersey, and it would require the sun to shine 24 hours a day, 365 days a year at Arizona summertime intensity. That doesn't seem feasible. You look at the windmills out in the water. I mean, so there's just really nothing to replace oil. So you take those factors, then you say, well, okay, I can't be the only one that sees this. We're not getting away from oil yet. There's nothing to replace it. Well, are we looking to find more? Well, you go to the upstream investment in oil and gas is down almost 70% over the last 10 years. We'll be lucky to hit $500-600 billion this year. We were up almost $1 trillion here in 2013. We got down to as low as $300 billion last year. And so we're not making the investment to replace the oil that we produce. Well, then you look at demand. Okay, well, if we're not replacing the oil, what's going to happen with demand? You realize 83% of the world is just now beginning to use oil? What do you think they're going to do? Once they see the benefits that oil provides for them and their family, do you think they're going to say, oh, dang, Greta's right. We're destroying the environment. Let's stop using oil. Or do you think they're going to say, Greta, stick it. We're using more oil. And so you have a demand built in that's going to grow just by the sheer nature of humanity wanting to be better. And so now you put all of those together, there was a recipe for disaster. Well, what we saw, it needed a catalyst. There had to be something that stirred the pot. And whether you like him or not, enter President Trump. And what he did is he changed the power structure in oil. For 70 years, OPEC had really been the key player in what oil prices would be, Saudi Arabia. Well, once we started producing as much oil as we did, all of a sudden, Saudi Arabia didn't have near as much say. Russia didn't have near as much say, OPEC plus. And so what we saw happening is we saw Russia and Saudi Arabia increasing production to push oil prices down. Reason being, most of our shale companies are highly leveraged. They need at least $50 a barrel to pay their bills. Well, if Russia and Saudi Arabia were able to push prices down to $40, $45 a barrel, all of a sudden, a lot of those companies are in trouble. And so that's really what we saw playing here about, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. And then all of a sudden, we thought it'd take 12 to 18 months to play out. And then all of a sudden, we were wrong on the trigger. COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I don't know, I can't explain to you why it did this. But it took what we thought would take 12 to 18 months and crunched it down into 30 days. And it all culminated on April 20th, 2020, when the oil markets crashed. And so when that day happened, that was the most impactful day I've ever had in my life in oil. Because most people, like I said a minute ago, if you went out and asked somebody to name an American oil company, they'd go to the big ones. Well, if you ask that same person the question, hey, what do you think happened to these oil companies when prices crashed? Most of them, it's Exxon. They can handle it. Well, remember, the American oil industry is 9,000 independent producers that average 12 employees or less. They're the ones that took the brunt of that. The first wipeout was on day one on April 20th. Your younger companies or your financially struggling companies, boom, they were gone, out of business in the front door. Well, the next wave happened a couple of months later when we sent everybody home for COVID. The companies that could pay their employees more than the government to get them to come back, they made it. A lot of the companies that couldn't, they were gone. And so you had a clearing of the playing field like we had never seen. And so, we were talking earlier about kids. And I've always told my kids, when something goes wrong on the ball field, whether it's a bad strike, whether it's whatever, when something goes wrong, you get one moment. You get one moment to clench your teeth, punch a wall, say a cuss, whatever you're going to utilize that moment to get out of your system. You got one moment, get it out of your system, then you move on. It's done. And so when prices crashed, we had a couple of partnerships that were really hurt. In fact, we had two that in their first distribution had paid the partners back right at 60% of their money. And we're about to raise $100 million that summer. And then all of a sudden prices crashed and it hurt those programs. Now they'll end up being okay. It came back, and so they're going to end up being fine. But it did really hurt them. And so if anybody had the right to curl up in the fetal position and suck their thumb, it was us. Well, I kind of looked at what I told my kids. All right, guys, we had our damn moment. And once we got through with that moment, we kind of looked at each other and said, hey, guys, this is what we thought was going to happen anyway. And so it just came a little quicker than we thought. And so when everybody else was kind of battening down the hatches, we opened up our sales and started buying. And to date, we've made 23 different acquisitions and secured what we believe to be about 100 million barrels in reserve. And now we're developing.
Find it heartbreaking to see so many homeless pets? The Animal Alliance agrees. That's why we're spaying and neutering to reduce overpopulation out of compassion. Visit theanimalalliance.org to help us save some heartbreak.
When you're acquiring in these acquisitions, are you acquiring the companies or are you acquiring just the sheer barrels of oil that have already been pumped? What exactly are you acquiring? The rights?
The mineral rights. The mineral rights. You go in and now in some cases, if the company owned the mineral rights, because we didn't want to be vultures. And so what we would do is a couple of the acquisitions, we came in and we cut a deal with the company. We said, okay, we're going to buy your assets for X. Over the next 12 months, if you can pay us back our money plus 10%, then you can have 75% of your reserves back. We'll just keep 25% of it. If 2 years, 50%, 3 years, And so we wanted to give them a chance to get back. This is what they found. We didn't want to be vultures and come.
Right, you weren't trying to kick people out. You were just trying to make sure that the business and industry survives.
Yeah. And now after that, then it came with us getting in negotiations with landowners, and it's turned out well for us.
So man, I have so many questions, but I'm going to start. I don't know where I'm going to start. Probably right here, just because we are kind of already talking about this. No, I'm not going to start there. I want to, but I'm not going to. Okay. So when there was a big hubbub, right? So you mentioned Trump came in, changed some things. COVID happened. When Biden got in, there was like a shutting down of the Exxon or whatever, the XL pipeline. There was all this stuff. And then there was a bit, right up until he probably pulled out of Afghanistan, this was the main topic of conversation regarding can people get new permits to drill? And it's like, there's a lot of people saying, look, I'm not going to invest into drilling if by the time I get set up and everything's ready to drill, I'm not allowed to drill again, right? So the politics in America around the subject are difficult at best to navigate. How does what Biden did after Trump actually affect the day-to-day? Because I've got clients, I've got friends and stuff who work in the oil fields in Utah, and it's like, it doesn't seem like there's a rhyme or reason to why they're pumping or not pumping. It's just like, well, they decided not to do it today or whatever. So I'm sure the owners know what's going on, but from a lay person on the outside, it's like, why'd you just get laid off? Like, it doesn't make sense. You're making $200,000 a year and then you got laid off the next day. How and why?
Well, I'm interested to see how the Chevron decision here this week, how that's going to affect, because a lot of those decisions are made in that manner. Some bureaucrats said, this is tearing the environment up without any rhyme or reason behind it until they start punishing companies. I was at CPAC here, last year. And this kid from PBS comes up to me. He says, hey, you're the oil guy, aren't you? I said, yeah. He said, well, let me ask you this. Who do you want to win in 24? I said, well, that really depends on what me you ask. He said, huh? I said, well, I said, if you ask the everyday me, if you ask the guy that has to pay the exact same thing you have to pay at the pump, I want Trump to win. And here's why. For some reason, he's the only politician that understands business. He understands that oil prices have to be such where it makes it worth the oil companies going to get it. Sure. However, it can't be too high that it kills the consumer. And we found a sweet spot between 60 and 80. And that was, I said, I can live there. My partners can live there. Everybody can live there. I said, so if you ask the everyday me, I want Trump to win. So now if you ask the oil guy in me, I want Biden to win. He said, really? Why is that? I said, it's simple. Keep scaring people away from oil. Keep DEI in it. Keep chasing away. Keep making us the demon. Because while you're doing that, I'm going to keep buying it. And eventually they're going to come out from under the ether and they're going to realize, oh my God, there's nothing to replace oil with. And when that day happens, the one who owns the most oil is going to be sitting in a pretty strong position, aren't they? He goes, oh, I didn't think of it that way. He said, well, what if they come in and take your oil? I said, well, if they come in and take my oil, then we got a whole lot more to worry about than my oil.
Sure. Unless they break you up like the Rockefellers, which they did.
Yeah, well, and I always, don't fight an invisible enemy.
Sure.
If they hadn't presented themselves yet, I think when facing life problems, when something hits you, you do what you can at the moment. You sit down, you look at the problem, and you analyze all the decisions you could make, everything you could do at that moment to make it better. And once you've done everything you can do, don't worry about it anymore. Turn it over to God. Because if you sit there and pine over it, worry about it, stress, sweat, cry, mope, whatever you do, when you're done doing all that, you know where you're going to be? Right back where you were when you started doing it. And so do what you can do at that moment and then turn it over to God. If something changes and you can do something at a later date, then do it. But until then, why are you going to sit there and worry about it? Because there's nothing you can do about it. And so that's kind of how I look at it. Now, when it comes to our wells, we're drilling the same type of wells. We love salt domes. And I won't get into the full-blown geological, but salt domes were your original oil fields. They were the spindle tops. They were the first geological formation that your that your geologist in the Wild West day could identify. And so your old oil companies are about like spoiled kids. Their favorite toy is their next toy. And so these guys would come out, they'd drill a well in a spot, they'd hit it, they'd cut backflips or making oil. Well, the next handful of years, they'd probably drill 30 wells right around that one spot. They didn't know they had 3,000 acres they could develop. They were looking at that one spot. Well, then all of a sudden they hit a well 5 miles away. They think they got all this oil. They just pick up and go over here. Well, the next 100 years, 24 companies might come in and drill all around the place. In a lot of cases, they develop all the oil. In a lot of cases, it doesn't make any sense to acquire the salt dome because all the oil is gone. However, there are several that they didn't, that they just didn't properly develop. And what we have right now, the Bayou Choctaw. When you hear them talk about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, that's our salt dome. We own the roughly 3,000 acres around it. That field was originally discovered in 1926. They've drilled over 200 wells in this field. Now, the beauty is the process when you drill is roughly the same as it was in the 40s and 50s. When you get done drilling a well, you log the well. You run a little geophone down there and it takes readings. You're looking for resistivity, permeability, porosity. There are certain things you're looking at in your wells and it tells you what you have. Well, the main difference between a log from 1940 and a log from 2024 is the printer and computer we print with. Most of the data is the same. Now, don't get me wrong. We get more details. We get more from our log today. But however, your main baseline, permeability, porosity, resistivity, those are the same things they were looking for. And so the first thing we do when we acquire a field is all this data is public, if you know where to look. We go and we acquire all the data from all the wells that have been drilled in the field. And in this particular field, we pulled 40,000 different data sets. And in each one of these data sets, we had logs for the 200 wells that were drilled out here. And so the first thing you do, once you get all that done, you go through and you look at all the successful wells. You look at their logs. You build a profile on the field. Like in this field, a successful well will have multiple stacked pay sands, anywhere from 3 to 8 pay sands, have anywhere from 500,000 to 1.5 million barrels of oil. That's a good solid well on this field. Well, all of a sudden, you see a log that looks just like the other ones, multiple stacked pay sands, beautiful, but when you look at the production, you see 50,000 barrels. You go, you set it aside. Keep looking at the logs. Well, all of a sudden, we saw another one. Another one. By the time we were done going through all this, we had a couple of dozen of these logs that were beautiful logs with very little production. And so you go, well, why not? And so once you do the research, you realize these guys had two main problems: gluttony and sand. They wanted to produce as much oil as they could as fast as they could. Well, when you produce these wells like that, you're going to clog them up. Think about it this way. You have a big gulp full of Coke and ice. Don't have a lid. You don't want the ice in your mouth. So to drink that Coke, you have to block it with your lip, your teeth. You block that ice and you gently pour the Coke in your mouth. Well, that's how you have to produce these wells. That's the exact opposite of what these guys did. They basically just opened their mouth and poured everything in. Yes, you're going to get a lot of production initially. However, eventually that sand's going to take over. And when it takes over, your beautiful well turns into a 5,000-foot column of cement. Well, they walk away. All we do is go out. Now, I'd love to say it's more complicated than this. I mean, my ego would like to say we created something that's never been done before. But the fact of the matter is we go and stand on the shoulders of giants and get what they left behind. And in this case, we think they left about 100 million barrels sitting there for us. We've gone out there and in 3 years, we've drilled 11 partnership wells. We placed 10 of them into production. The one well we missed was a mechanical failure. The oil's there. We'll go back and re-drill that well at a later date once we figure out how to get past that little bend. But it's, I kind of look at it. My partners, if they have a problem, I have a problem. And my partners live, I call it the 3 S's. They live from 3 piles of money. The first pile is their sacred money. That's money they pay their bills with, take care of their family. Nobody touches that money. The second pile is their safe pile. Their safe pile is what they buy gold with, what they buy real estate, what they buy silver. That pile, don't get me wrong, they want it to grow, but they want, more importantly, when they come back to it, they want to know there's going to be just as much there, maybe more. Well, their third pile is their speculation pile. That's the pile they play with me with. That's the one they want to make multiples, 2, 3, 5, 10 to 1 on their money. Well, all of a sudden, you remember the silver crunch here a couple years ago? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, a lot of my partners that had a bunch of money in that safe pile in silver were calling me saying, oh my God, silver is just as manipulated as everything else. They realized it wasn't as safe. And so it really caused a problem for me. And so I'm sitting down, I'm trying to think of ways to help them. And it hit me one night about 3 a.m. I think I scared my wife nearly to death when I shot up out of bed. I think the dog tried to bite me, but it hit me. I ran down to the office and started running numbers. And my wife comes running out and said, "What's going on?" I said, "Baby, let me ask you this. What is one product that everybody has to have? One product that half the world wants it for free, the other half the world wants it $1 million, and it's not going away?" She goes, "Oil." I said, "Absolutely." I said, "So if we didn't know we were on top of the oil, if we didn't know we had it, it'd be a completely different conversation we'd be having."
Sure.
However, now that we know what we have right here, I started looking at my partners saying, "Look, guys, if you want to get your money out of the rat race, because nobody can predict what the stock market's going to do." I mean, I'm looking at stuff, and your traditional indicators are completely whitewashed right now. I mean, there's really no reason, because you can't figure it out. I said, well, if you want to get your money out of the rat race and park it somewhere on something that you know is going to have a value, put it in oil. Now, the big question you're looking is, when you put $1 in this bank, are you going to pull out $1 or are you going to pull out $100? That's really what we're looking at. Now, there's a little more detail to it, but in the general scheme, that's what we're looking at. Because it doesn't matter, like I was saying a minute ago, it doesn't matter what the talking heads say on TV. There is literally nothing out there right now that can replace oil. And anybody that tells you differently is lying. Now, maybe somebody's going to come up with a great invention.
So,
maybe,
do you think that, because this is something that we've been getting into, I guess I've been researching more, but the Invention Secrecy Act, where you're dealing with the government, or if you even call it the government, I don't think the government has as much power as we give them credit for. It's probably more shadowy than the government, but there are people who suppress information.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's if you study Nikola Tesla and study some of the stuff that was happening decades ago, maybe centuries ago at this point almost, there was stuff that would have taken the place of oil.
Oh, yeah.
And it just got stifled in its development. So to one degree, I agree. Like, yes, public knowledge, there's nothing out there. Shadow knowledge, though, there's stuff out there. So for instance, just to give a comparison, technology wise, AI is this new thing, right? We all are experiencing AI and how it can work, and the computing power and all this wonderful stuff. AI has been around for decades. It's just, it hasn't been publicly accessible for decades, to the point where anybody can go control it and create with it. But the method of gathering information, that's been around for, like, that's all Google is ultimately. It's a searching system, right? So there's that. So it's not like the technology isn't there. Has the technology been used for that thing? And is it like open source? Is it decentralized? And is there a situation, like, because we were talking a little bit before this about conspiracy theories, which I'm going to get into some just because I want to know your thoughts or your relationships with, but are you open to the perspective that there will be a day when, at least from a power source perspective, which I understand oil gets used for a lot more things, and that's kind of what another thing you brought up. There's a lot of things that oil gets used for. Power is, I don't know what percentage of, like, if we were looking at all of the uses of oil, 100% of them, I don't know what percentage, like transportation and electricity are taking up that pie, but I'm sure it's significant, but also I wouldn't be shocked if it was less than the majority of the uses of oil. But like nuclear power, the ability to create smaller nuclear power plants, although they're not approved right now, they're definitely there. And so I'm just curious, like, what is it? Are you open to the idea that something could disrupt the oil industry or the oil need worldwide? Maybe not permanently or entirely, but enough to make a dent in the uses of it? Or do you think it'll just like they did before, they were using it to get kerosene, then they transitioned from kerosene to gasoline because what's his name was losing the electricity battle to JP Morgan. And so he's like, oh, well, I guess we'll fuel the cars then rather than the street lights with our oil, right? So I believe in it, innovation as well. So maybe the use of the oil transitions rather than goes away. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on all that, because you have a...
Well, you have to pay attention to it. I mean, that'd be like farming not having a hose and water. Right. However, when I look at it, the transportation, you're right, it's not as large a percentage as you think. I had a number in my head, but I don't want to be inaccurate and say a wrong number, and so I'll just keep it to myself. But it's not as large as you think. And then you do look at all the other products that are made from oil, whether it be plastics, whether it be, anything with poly is oil. There are roughly 6,000 products to be made from one barrel. And so I really don't see oil ever disappearing. Now, are we going to find stuff to replace it with? Yeah. And if the day comes where oil is no longer profitable, I'll find something else to do. However, I just don't see it happening anytime soon. One of the earmarks I look for is everything they say attacking oil, I kind of look at it as window dressing. The minute they go after the tax benefits, because the tax benefits are some of the most outstanding tax benefits in the investment world. It's an above line deduction. Uncle Sam pays roughly 30-35% of your investment. I'm not a CPA. It varies for everybody. I'm just kind of give you a general rule of thumb. But you put $100,000 in a drilling program, Uncle Sam's roughly going to pay for $35,000. And so you're playing on 65-cent dollars. Now, the minute they go after that, okay, now they're truly attacking oil. However, when you look at the environmental argument, I truly believe that's a false argument. Sure. I believe they set up a dichotomy that's just, what, you don't want to do this? What, do you want us all to die? And the fact of the matter is, I believe all of us have a little environmentalist in them. There's nothing I love more than getting up and walking out of my house in the morning and looking at the 25 acres manicured in front of my house. Why? It's mine. I love it. I'm going to take care of it. Well, if that's not environmental, I don't know what is. The difference is, I don't believe your solutions are the solutions we should use. Because if your stated goal is you want to save the world, but to do that, we're going to first have to destroy it, you're not a serious person and I won't engage with you. Because that's what we'd have to do. When and I said, don't take my word for it. Get on Google, or whatever search engine you want.
Yeah.
Open up one window and type in images of oil field. And then open up another page and type in images of lithium mine. You tell me which one's destroying the environment. You have to move 500,000 pounds of raw material to make one lithium battery for a car. And so they set up this false dichotomy when in fact we have natural gas. The U.S. is basically the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. Every home, well, not every home, but a lot of homes already have natural gas lines run to them. We could put converters on every car, run them on natural gas, pipe the natural gas directly to your garage. We don't have to go to the gas station. Those are all solutions that can be that we already have the infrastructure for. We don't have the infrastructure to do what they want to do. If you brought the cars that they want to Bowling Green, Kentucky, and charge, I did the math, and it's really it's all these crazy numbers, but it boils down to it's 1 + 1 = 2. How much do you have and how much can you use? And if you put 8 of those supercharging stations in Bowling Green, and only half of them were used at once and crashed the power grid, we couldn't handle it. Well, who's going to fix that? How much money is that going to, it makes no sense.
Sure.
And so I kind of look at it, look at nuclear. You were talking about nuclear a minute ago. You mean to tell me we can run the most advanced subs on the planet on nuclear power, yet we can't do it here? No, we're letting a 40-year-old movie keep us scared. And so it's just that they set up a false argument, and we've been so conditioned politically correct to shy away from being somebody that I think the biggest change, a lot of people have had enough. And if you're intelligent, you're going to bring a good argument to me, I'll debate with you. Sure. I tell my kids, look, when you get in a debate with somebody, stick with the facts. The facts don't care what you think about them. They don't care if you like them, if you're mad at them. They don't care. They are what they are. The minute somebody says, I feel, you won. Feelings have nothing to do with it. Mm-hmm. It is a basic fact, right or wrong argument. If anybody tries to tell you 1 + 1 = 3, they're lying. It will never equal 3. It will always equal 2. Nothing is going to change that. And so there's certain things that I'm willing to argue and I'm willing to debate over. However, if you're not a serious person, no, I'm not even gonna engage in you. You're
Sure.
not worth my time. You know, I had the same kid from PBS. He wasn't saying I was racist. It was weird how he posed the question, but it was weird. And I looked at him and I said, "You want to know what my favorite color is?" He said, "Well, what?" I said, "It's green. I don't care what color you are. If you're the one who's going to make me the most money, you're the one that I'm going to hire."
Mm-hmm.
I said, the minute you understand that's most people's motivation is what's best for me and my family. How can I make us the most money so we can live in this world? I understand, hey, we want to make enough to get by and not, no, I have no problem with that. Many people live their lives how they want to live. No, I want to leave a mark.
Ever feel like your heart just can't take seeing so many homeless pets? The Animal Alliance understands your pain. We're on a mission to spay and neuter to reduce overpopulation and prevent the heartache. Visit theanimalalliance.org to support our efforts.
When we started building this company, we saw an opportunity to do something that hadn't been done in 40 years in America. You realize there's been one company that happened through a merger. They didn't do it independently. But in 40 years, you have not had one company build themselves to a major status, 100 million market cap, strictly on American oil.
Interesting.
Now there's an opportunity to do it. Somebody's going to consolidate this oil. Somebody's going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather be people who care what happens to it.
Right.
And so that's really what I'm looking at. I want to build the next Exxon. Well, on my computer screen, I have a big picture of Mount Everest. And I got this iPad. I'm getting into the technological age, and my kids got me a pen and a drawing program. And I feel like a kid, like I'm coloring a coloring book. But I got this mountain and I drew a little stick figure about a third of the way up the mountain with a little flag that said, "You were here." Well, the only reason they climbed Mount Everest is they first decided to.
Sure.
And so when we decided to build a company that leaves a mark, are we going to shoot for the stars and hit the moon? I don't know. We're sitting on what we think is 100 million barrels right now. I'd love that to be 1 billion barrels. Well, to do that, I need as many partners as I can to get on board.
Sure.
You know, I was telling my brother, I said, "Look, Bo," I said, "we can keep doing what we're doing. You, I, everybody here, our partners, we're all going to make a lot of money. When you and I are long gone 20 years from now, there's going to be plenty of wells for our kids to drill. Our kids, everybody's going to be fine. We've already done that work." I said, "But you know what? We're going to do that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Why not use this platform and see what we can build? Because right now is the opportunity to do it. Now, if it turns out ultimately that it's all oil and gas, great. We have a head start. If something changes in the world and some kid invents the greatest thing since sliced bread, well, heck, we'll have to transition at that point. But I know a little bit about human nature, and if somebody had invented the next great energy source, they would have told somebody.
Sure.
And we're not even hearing rumblings of it right now.
Yeah. No, I love that. So I wanted to ask this other question. And I don't know, I have no idea where this will go, but I'm just curious because I don't know how tight-knit the oil industry is at the biggest players. But we were talking about conspiracy theories before this, so we're going to talk about it. There's one political family that is very well known for the oil involvement, and there's the conspiracy side of it, which may or may not be true. And this isn't necessary to forward rumors. I'm just curious what your experience is, and how likely you feel that could have been a reason for the war in Iraq was more over oil than any other potential reasons. Or what?
I've never had any of that play in my day-to-day life. I'll go ahead and make that statement. I've never been trying to get a property and felt it. I mean, yes, you have cutthroat. It's oil and gas. I mean, you have stuff that.
No, that's any business. I understand there's natural business like shenanigans that happen.
However, now in researching, in looking at the history of oil, I mean, who's to, like we were talking a minute ago, the minute you jump that Rubicon the first time, you know, and I truly believe that that's what's happening right now. Is I gave a speech at a Tea Party rally in 2012. And so we saw this coming. However, at 2012, I'm young. mid-30s, 4 kids, wife, and I've lived all over the country. And I mean, it was like, it's out in California, and it's out in New York. It wasn't in my circle. And so once the rhinos kind of squashed the Tea Party movement, they chewed us up and spit us out like we were used bubble gum. Well, once that kind of washed through, it wasn't in my daily circle, so I stopped paying attention to it. Well, now it's in my daily circle. Now it's something I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Pick whatever calamity, whatever crossroads, pick whichever one. It's in your life on a day-to-day circle. You see American athletes kneeling for our national anthem. I mean, stuff it's like, hang on, whoa. I understand we're not perfect. I understand that we've done some things, but I believe we're the only country in the history of the world that killed 500,000 of our own people to right one of those problems. And we did. And so it's like that means nothing. I mean, you look at the Mexican-American War. People seem to forget that happened. We occupied Mexico City for 9 months. If we would have been like any other country in the history of the world, guess what? Mexico would already be a part of the United States. Everybody trying to immigrate here would already be Americans. No, we stayed there for 9 months. We said, look, we don't want Mexico. We'll draw the line right here. Keep your country. We'll keep north of here. And we gave it back to them. And so you look at, well, whatever you want to call they.
Sure. Yeah, they.
I truly don't believe. I truly don't believe in Republican Democrat anymore. Yeah, I saw a poll where they just asked general questions. They eliminated all politics from it and just laid scenarios. If this happened, what would you do? If this happened, what would you do? And it was right at 80% of the people answered the same way. It was just traditional American values. If you need help, I'll help you if I can. If I can't help you, I can't help you. Right. Leave me alone. I know best. I mean, just traditional. And they've just history taught if you get, what does the magician do? Get you watching this hand so you don't. Right. So it's the same thing. I mean, it's the same thing. So you look through all of this and you look at one thing that they understood before we did. You control Hollywood, you control the culture. You control the media, you control the information. You control education, you control the future. We've been under a 70-year assault. And it's been step by step, piece by piece, bit by bit. Now, going back to the conspiracy side of this, I was one of those guys that bleed red, white, and blue. I mean, courtesy of Red, White, and Blue is on my playlist in the car. I mean, however, I would look at the world and say, surely my government wouldn't do that. Surely they wouldn't do something to hurt me. I mean, there's got to be a reason they did that. You make excuses for me because you don't want to. And then all of a sudden, when you jump at the first time, like we were talking earlier, whether it's COVID, whether it's 9/11, whether it's JFK, doesn't matter whether it's climate change, doesn't matter what your point is. But when you finally jump the first time and say, you know what? Yeah, they would. Well, at that point, now you have to reanalyze everything you've looked at. And you look at it from a different lens. And well, like I was talking earlier when I was at CPAC last year, I walk backstage and I'm kind of starstruck. I mean, these are people all I see on TV. I'm RJ Burr from Bowling Green, Kentucky, and so I'm talking to the guy that might be the prime minister of England. Are you kidding me? And we're talking about something I know something about, energy. Mm-hmm. And I looked at him, I said, it just doesn't make sense. And he said, well, you can't control abundance. You can control scarcity. If you put on the right frame and ask the questions, it all makes sense. And I am an Occam's razor guy. The simplest explanation is most likely the accurate one. Mm-hmm. And when every box keeps getting checked, well, how many times does somebody have to lie to you before they're a liar? Once, twice, right? 5, 20. Shame on us. I mean, you look at politicians, and I don't want to pick fights. I'm just being brutally honest.
Sure.
You look at, I don't care who they are, pick any politician. And the vast majority, they're the least impressive people on the planet. Yet they're the ones making the decisions. Give me a break. And so it's just
that's because they're the only ones willing to go into politics. Like, what's the chance that somebody like you who thinks and does see the world the way you see it?
I mean, once my family, I'm a dad. And once my kiddos are taken care of, then I'm free. Now, if I had to, I'd say I would. I mean, that's not something that I'd stop if it came to me. I'm not going to go out and look for it. However, what I do see is just to be successful in general, to be a successful businessman or woman, you have to be intelligent. You have to be smart. You have to be instinctive. There are certain characteristics that you have. And to make it in this world, you focus all of your instincts on business. You focus it all on what you're doing to build your brand, well, we've never taken our time. We've given them about 10% of our effort. Well, now you have a lot of us that are finally turning our lights to them and saying, okay, I'm going to give you everything I got. I'm not accepting the premise of the question anymore. I look at it. There were three people who really shaped who I am: God, my dad, and Rush Limbaugh. That's how it is. Right. And one of the lessons I learned from Rush is that it's very easy to be negative.
Sure.
Anybody can wake up in the morning, walk outside, and find something to bitch about. You can. That's easy. It's actually cowardly in some cases. It's very hard to find something to be positive about every day. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I make sure I do. I find something to be positive about, because we do live in the greatest country that's ever lived. I can't think of anybody who's even close. I mean, there's still a reason people die trying to get here. And so for us to accept the premise, another Rush lesson, for us to accept the premise of the question, just because the media has been telling us that there's a majority of something, do you really believe it? Once again, how many times do they have to lie to you before they're alive? So when they say 70%, well, is it backed up by 70%, or is it because they were the only media outlet? They were the only source of information. Now you have other
10 people, and only 7 of those 10.
Yeah, and so you just, it's just one of those. I love old sayings, because there's a reason they're old sayings. There's truth to them. Well, one of mine is, I might have been born at night, but not last night.
Right. No, I love that. So some of the things that I've taken from this, because we're going to wrap up here, but I think probably the biggest thing that I've taken, although I've got lots of other information and questions answered that I wanted answered, but the biggest thing that I think for the audience to take away is there's two things. One is, don't fight an invisible enemy. All you can do is all you can do, and then turn it over to God. I think that is such an important lesson that gets overlooked, and so easy to stress about stuff that we have no control over. And social media and just media in general, and even the people that we associate with now, because they're indoctrinated, we all are to a degree, we get so worked up about stuff that we have no control over. And I think what you said, hey, if it hasn't happened yet, if the enemy hasn't presented themselves directly to you, then don't worry about it. Like, you can't fight something you don't know you're fighting entirely. You can have character, though. You can determine who you're going to be and act accordingly. And if there's enemies to that, then they might present themselves, but don't stress about other people. Decide who you want to be, and then become that. And then the other thing that you mentioned that I think was a really, really key thing that I'll maybe talk to you after the show about is the three areas of money, right? There's the sacred money, that's for your family, for you, maybe for your God, whatever you choose to do with it, but that's your sacred money. Then you have your safe money, which is, hey, I'm going to put it here, but I want it to grow. I'm okay with it's growing, but I definitely want it to be there when I get back to it. And then the speculation money. What money are you willing to go and try out and do something? And so many people, they feel like they are running behind, and so they're putting almost all of their money into the speculation money, and they are not taking care of the sacred or safe money. And then they wonder why they aren't making it. They wonder why they're struggling. It's because you didn't even follow the basic premise of, like, take care of your sacred money first, then your safe money, then your speculation money. Not your speculation money hoping that you can make enough to have sacred money and safe money. It's not
very few people hit the lottery.
Yeah.
What Vince Lombardi, was it Vince Lombardi that said, it's amazing you'll find success sitting right next to hard work?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I said, I'm an old quote guy, and Vince Lombardi is one of my favorites. And you hate to be so cutthroat and cold blooded about it, but the fact of the matter is, winners do what losers aren't willing to do.
Yep.
And my boys came up and were asking me one time, my oldest son, his dad, what's it take to be successful? I said, well, the first is you got to work hard. The second is you got to work harder. And the third is you got to be the hardest worker out there. If there's talent there, everything else will take care of itself. And so find something you love doing where it's not work, but be honest with yourself. Is there a way you can make money doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, and I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but until you're independently wealthy, you're not helping move the ball forward for yourself, because life is hard, man. Life is cold-blooded. It's cruel. It'll leave you cut up and gutted on the side of the road if you let it. And that's the biggest problem, is we're unleashing a generation of kids onto the world that have no idea how cold it can be. And they're getting a hard taste of reality. That kid from PBS must have really made a mark on me, because the same kid asked me, he goes, well, what would you tell all the woke parents? I said, nothing, keep doing it. He goes, what? Why would you say that? I said, look, you're just making the world easier for my boys when they're in it. I said, so keep doing it. I said, I don't want my boys to have to fight the battles that I fought. If they get layovers, go get you a couple layovers. Let's not ask for more opponents. But the fact of the matter is a country that's scary, because pride-wise, I want Carl Lewis to beat Ben Johnson. I don't want to win against somebody. That's not how you build a career. You build by your hard battles are what make you who you are. You don't learn a thing from a 40-0 win. You learn from a 14-13 loss.
Right.
I saw Ed Sheeran the other day talking about success, and how success is all they talk about. They don't talk about any of the failures. Well, the failures have to happen to enable that success. We didn't come out on our first day, start hitting oil wells like we knew exactly. No, man, we had to figure it out too. Mm-hmm. Now, we're pretty good at it now. Like I said, in the last 5 years, we placed 32 of the last 35 wells that we've drilled into production. We're making our partners some good money. We're pretty good at it. And so that's not, I know that can sound egotistical, but I don't mean it that way. It's just when you're in the position where you're looking at placing your hard-earned money with somebody, I truly believe that is the most sacred act that can happen in business. Most people didn't make their money easy. Most people had to sacrifice. They had to miss Little League games. They had to miss dinner with the family. They had to do things that others didn't have to do to be successful. And so when that person chooses to take from what he's earned and entrust it to you, man, that's as big a decision that can be made. And so shame on you if you take that for granted. That's why they're my partners. They're not my investors. They've hitched their wagon to my family. Now, does that mean we're going to win every time? No, man, this is oil and gas. If anybody ever tells you that it's guaranteed, they're lying to you.
Right.
Only the good Lord above knows exactly what's down there. Now, what I will do is put you in a position to make you the most money I can. If something happens with the program and I can help the program out, I'm going to help it out. Not to get you to invest again. I don't care if you've already had faith in me. You don't have to put another dime with it. I'm going to help it out if I can, because it's the right thing to do. If I can't help it out, I'm going to tell you I can't help it out. If I can at a later date, I will. Because I want to make sure I take care of you, because without you, I don't have a business. Mm-hmm. And so the minute you forget that is the minute you start going downhill. And, once again, not to get on a soapbox and all that, but I love doing it. Yeah. I love oil and gas. I've loved it my whole life. And I know that right now there are a lot of people looking for places where they can protect their money, where they can take a breath, because a lot's coming at them very fast. And I was giving a speech here last week to a group of real estate investors, and the very first question I asked them: raise your hand if you've ever looked at or participated in oil and gas. And a handful of the people raised their hands. I said, now, you do realize that everybody in here should have their hands raised. We are all in the oil and gas business. Whether you want to be or not, you are paying for oil and gas. And the products you buy and the energy you consume, every aspect, for the most part, every aspect of your life has something going to hydrocarbons in it. Well, if you're going to be in oil and gas anyway, doesn't it make sense to try to reverse the flow of income? And so when it comes to looking at who we are, that's the first thing I tell you to do. Find out who we are. Sure. Research who you're doing business with. Doesn't matter if it's me or anybody else. Research them. My dad told me a long time ago, boy, one of the easiest way to check somebody's credibility is to see how long they had their phone number. Mm-hmm. I've had the same phone number for over 30 years now. And so it's something about 30 years. Sorry, that was kind of stupid. Because I got it when my oldest son was born, so 24 years. So I've had the same phone number for 24 years, and I was one of those guys. I wouldn't get a cell phone. Nope. I work on the phone all day. You want to talk to me? Call me at the office. If I'm not at the office, call me at the house. In between's my time. And then all of a sudden I got what happens if something happens and I need to get in touch with you? Well, now it's an extra appendage. Now I couldn't live without my cell phone because it's basically my office. I can be anywhere I want. And my partners can reach me at any point in time.
Right.
And, when it comes to guarantees, like I was telling you earlier, that's a cuss word in oil and gas. We don't even use it around here. We call it the G word. Right. However, I do give my partners 2 guarantees. One is if you call me and by chance I don't answer, I'll call you back before I go to bed that night. And 2, if you ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, I'll find it for you. Mm-hmm. And other than that, I keep my head down, my tail up, and I keep plowing until corn starts growing.
Awesome.
And that's really, that's the only way you reach the top.
I agree completely. And I'm curious, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you or learn more about your company, where would they go to do that?
Email me, RJ Burr at panex.us. That's probably the easiest way to reach me directly. Or you can go to our company's website. Panex.us is the company website. Panex.us/learn is our page that we created for individuals who've never looked at anything in oil. It has Oil and Gas 101, just gives you a basic info on the industry. Oil and Gas 102 kind of lays out the tax benefits. There's a movie on that page. It's kind of funny. It was 2 years ago, right before Christmas. I'm up here. It's probably 6 a.m. Nobody's at the office. I'm just kind of making a coffee, lining out the end of the year. And I'm looking around the kitchen, and I don't know why. I hadn't done this my whole life, but I'm looking around the kitchen. I said, well, that's made from oil. That's made from oil. That's made from oil. And I started listing off everything that was in there. I mean, it's not a big kitchen. It's a hallway, essentially.
Sure.
And I was shocked. And by the time I got to my desk, it hit me. I was like, well, hang on, Jay, if this shocked you and you've been doing this your whole life, how many people have no idea? And so we created a movie called A Morning Without Oil. And it just basically takes a couple. They wake up in bed in a modern world. And we say, hang on, we're reversing it. We're going to do a day without oil. And we remove all the oil products from their home. And it just follows them from bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, and garage going to work. And yes, I think it's funny. I mean, I think we did a pretty good job with it. However, it makes a point. When you're done, people don't realize that if you remove oil from your life, we're no better than the Stone Age. I mean, we're back to burning torches. We're back to, I mean, and for people to willingly want to do it, I kind of want to say, man, what are you smoking? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that's funny. Cool. Well, that's awesome. So it's PANEX.
Yes. PANEX.
.us/learn.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll get that on there. And just thank you so much. This was an awesome conversation. I'm really grateful that I had it. I love talking to people from wildly different industries that I've never considered talking about or to, because I get to learn a lot. And that's what is exciting for me. And then finding out, doesn't matter where you come from, what you were raised in, what you do, success leaves clues. And we all have gotten to where we are in life by guiding questions and axioms and how we're going to live our lives. And everybody I know, everybody I've interviewed has something of value to share. And I'm really grateful to share that with the listeners, because if we can help more people think more positively and more considerately, then we're all going to win together. So thank you so much, RJ. Any final words?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about it. I would give everybody it's a little exercise that I do every night. I've been doing it since I was a kid. When you go to bed and you brush your teeth, take a minute and look yourself in the mirror. You're the only one doing it. Nobody else sees it. You're the only ones. If you like who you see, then you're doing everything right. If you don't, instincts are telling you that something's off and you need to analyze it and figure out what it is. Because God gave us instincts for a reason. That was the first shot fired across the bow. When they removed God from the public square, they took our conscience away. Well, guess what? They didn't take it away. We just learned how not to listen to it. Your instincts are there for a reason. And if you will sit down every night and look yourself and be honest, it's very hard to lie to yourself. I know some people who can do it, but it's very hard. Look yourself in the mirror and see if you're proud of who you're looking at. Your instincts will tell you. And if you're not, then you know there's steps you can do. But guess what? Everything is achievable as long as you put your mind to it and do it. And when you finally get to the point that you're proud of who you're looking at that point, you're ready to take on the world. And I knew that a long time ago. I knew that before I met my wife, before I had everything, if I didn't like who I was looking at, it didn't matter who I met. They were never going to make me happy. And so once I got to the point that hey, you're doing good. You're not perfect. There was only one perfect guy and we hung him on a cross, but you're making strides. And you know if you're doing right. And as long as you look yourself in the mirror and be good with who you're looking at, hey, the world will be a better place.
Yeah, completely agree. Thank you so much. And we'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy show.
Do you wish there was fewer pets in shelters tugging at your heartstrings? The Animal Alliance is on it. We're spaying and neutering to ensure fewer pets are born into a life of suffering. Visit the Animal Alliance to help us save our bleeding hearts.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.